Our stupid, dumb, filthy boy named Taeyong was sitting outside the gym in broad daylight, smoking quietly while staring down at his phone. His posture showed exhaustion and frustration as he remained there without moving. While looking at the screen, his thoughts kept drifting toward the idea that he did not want to work in that place anymore. He wondered why he was even present there when he was barely earning any money. The job felt meaningless to him, and the small amount he received did not seem worth all the trouble he was facing. He reminded himself that he had only been the temporary manager of the gym for 1 week. Yet during that short time, everything already felt overwhelming. He kept thinking about how strange it was that all the gym members could spend their time training there so intensely in such a short period. He could not understand how they managed to survive such exhausting routines day after day. The more he thought about it, the more confused and irritated he became. His mind then shifted to the way nothing in his life ever seemed to work out properly. Every time he tried to settle into something, problems appeared. He feared that if his uncle found out that all the gym members had already left the gym, he might react violently. This thought filled Taeyong with anxiety. Because of that fear, he briefly considered running away and hiding somewhere far from the gym. The idea of escaping sounded tempting to him, as if it could solve all his worries. However, he immediately realized that if he ran away from this place, he would be able to find another job anywhere else. He felt trapped between staying in a job he hated and leaving without any future security. Suddenly, a commotion came out of the gym. Taeyong remained seated outside and observed her from a distance. As he observed her, he thought that she looked extremely fierce whenever she became exhausted doing all her exercises. There was something intense and frightening about the way she trained. Her movements were strong and aggressive, and even when she appeared tired, she did not seem weak at all. At that moment, he decided that he would definitely talk to her that day. He felt that the situation could no longer be ignored. With that decision in mind, he slowly began walking upstairs in order to confront her. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if his fear was pulling him back. While moving forward, he worried that people might start asking questions about the explosion, like sounds coming from inside the gym. The noise was so loud that it could easily disturb the neighbors, and he imagined complaints piling up against him. When he reached the door, he hesitated. Just as he was about to open it, he suddenly felt scared. He tried to calm himself and told himself that he should not be afraid. Even so, the feeling remained that a monster was living inside that place. The thought made him uneasy, but he forced himself to move forward anyway. After gathering a little courage, he finally opened the door and called out the girl's name, Gina. In a firm but nervous voice, he told her that she was hitting the punching bag too hard and that the noise was probably bothering the neighbors. He suggested that she should try to keep it down and control her strength. At that moment, Gina was standing in front of him, striking the punching bag with such energy and intensity that she did not even hear him at first. Her punches landed heavily, and the bag swung wildly from side to side. She looked completely focused on her training and seemed unaware of anything else around her. The punching bag suddenly moved in his direction and almost hit him. Seeing it rush toward him frightened him badly, and he stepped back in shock. Gina suddenly stopped and stood still. Her body was covered in sweat, and her breathing was heavy from all the effort she had put into her training. She looked at him with surprise and asked if he was okay and whether he had been hit. She quickly apologized and explained that she had not noticed him walking into the room. She added that his sudden appearance had scared her, which was the reason she reacted the way she did. Taeyong then apologized as well, saying that he had not meant to surprise her or enter so suddenly. At that moment, he realized that she was the so-called monster who lived in the gym and the one responsible for driving all the gym members away and creating trouble for him. Her name was Gina Kang. He stared at her more carefully now, seeing her strength and strange determination in a new way. He told her that she had broken the punching bag again. His voice sounded tired and confused, as if he could not understand how this kept happening. In response, she said that she was only doing what he had instructed her to do. He replied that he did not remember saying anything like that to her. This made her look slightly surprised, and she reminded him of what he had said when she was first there and when he had appointed her as a coach. She explained that he had told her to keep the members in line and to show them what she was capable of by using the punching bag. She also mentioned that he had said breaking the punching bag would be a very cool move for her. According to her, those were all the things he had told her, and that was the reason she was trying her best every single day to follow his words. She believed she was simply obeying his instructions. Hearing this explanation, Taeyong realized that she had taken his words far too seriously. He could not believe how obsessed she had become with the idea. He began to wonder what was even possible to destroy punching bags just by practicing so much. Everything he had said earlier now seemed to have turned her into some kind of weaponized human being. The way she trained made her look less like an ordinary person and more like a living weapon. He felt strangely relieved that she was only training inside this tiny gym. In his mind, he thought that if she were a professional MMA fighter, it would feel as if she were fighting an angry elephant inside the ring, creating chaos wherever she went. Finally, he told her that he wanted to ask her to restrain herself from damaging the punching bags, especially when no one else was present in the gym. He tried to explain this calmly so that she would understand. He did not want more trouble, and he did not want the equipment to be destroyed again and again. She responded by saying that maybe she should practice every day. She wondered aloud if stopping or slowing her training would be a mistake. She feared that if she failed to break the punching bag in front of others because she had lacked during practice or trained less, it would be very embarrassing for both of them. Taeyong was thinking to himself that he had just told Gina not to use the punching bag too much, and that perhaps she was starting to lose control. He assumed that if she damaged it, she would not even bother to pay for it. With an uneasy smile, he spoke to her in a gentle tone and said that not many people were coming to the gym these days. He explained that because of that, they would not be earning much income anytime soon. He also added that it would not be good for her body to keep pushing herself so hard and suggested that maybe she should stop her training for a while. For a brief moment, Gina looked irritated by what he said. After thinking about it, she admitted that he might be right. She said that she also noticed that very few people were coming to the gym lately and that now only the two of them remained there. Then she hesitantly asked him whether he believed all of this had happened because she had become a coach at the gym. She continued by saying that she felt she had been nothing but a nuisance to him and that she should try to make up for everything she had caused. Taeyong heard her words and began speaking to himself in his thoughts. He thought that she seemed to be aware of her own shameless behavior and that she was the one who had ruined everything. However, when he finally spoke aloud, he denied her accusation. He told her that it could not possibly be her fault because he himself had appointed her as a coach. Still, inside his heart, he realized that she was actually right. Things had started to fall apart ever since the moment he had made her the coach. His mind drifted back to the day when his uncle, who owned the gym, had asked him to serve as the temporary manager. That responsibility had felt heavy on his shoulders. On that very first day, the first person who had come to him was Gina Kang. For reasons he could not explain, she had claimed that he was her senior from school. He tried to remember her, but no matter how hard he thought, he could not recall having a junior like her. Yet there she was, a beautiful woman with a powerful and well-trained body, standing confidently in front of him. Because she had approached him first and spoken to him with such familiarity, he had been unable to reject her. He simply played along with her words and pretended that he remembered her. He felt awkward, but did not want to embarrass himself by admitting the truth. As they spent more time together, he had planned to do cardio training with her like any normal trainee. However, he ended up agreeing to her suggestion instead. That decision became the irreversible mistake of his life. He had sparred with her under the excuse of practice, not thinking much about it at the time. Now, when he reflected on that moment, he understood that there had never been a chance for him to win against someone like her. She was far stronger than he had expected. On that day, he had been beaten badly and completely humiliated during the sparring match. Unable to accept such embarrassment, he had appointed her as the coach, as if it had been his intention from the very beginning. He convinced himself that it was a logical decision, even though deep inside he knew it was only to protect his pride. He placed her in charge of the gym classes and tried to act as if everything was normal. Gina then began sparring with the members one by one. Each time she defeated them without hesitation. One after another, they fell before her strength. As days passed, she continued to dominate the gym completely. After a week, the gym was no longer the same place it had been before. The members had either quit or stopped coming altogether. In the end, only Gina and Taeyong remained in the gym. He clearly knew that this situation was her fault, but he could not bring himself to tell her the truth. He could not say that everyone had left because she had beaten them all during training. He was also too afraid to ask her to return the money that had been paid for the classes. He feared that if he questioned her, she might turn against him as well. In his mind, he imagined her warning him not to cross the line or even beating him so badly that he would be forced to learn his place. Because of that fear, he chose silence and endured everything without protest. As his thoughts returned to the present moment, Taeyong realized that he could not afford to speak honestly. He decided that the safest choice was to endure her behavior and keep himself out of danger. With a forced calmness, he told her that he had noticed her abilities as a coach from the very beginning. He insisted that there was no way people had left the gym because of her. Hearing this, Gina felt relieved. She replied that she also believed he was right, and that she had only done what he had instructed her to do. She said that there was no way he could be wrong because she had simply followed his words. She reminded him of the time when she had told him she was not confident about teaching. According to her, he had spoken in front of everyone and encouraged her to continue. Taeyong was shocked by her words and asked if he had really said such a thing. Gina confirmed that he had. She explained that on that particular day, he had complained about having a headache and had told her to spar very lightly with the members, just like she had done now. He had also instructed her to let them learn on their own through practice. Trying to understand what had happened, Taeyong asked her if she had beaten all those people simply because he had told her to spar lightly with them. Gina answered honestly that she had followed his orders exactly, and that everyone had fallen to the ground during the sparring sessions. At that moment, Taeyong finally understood that she was the true reason everyone had left the gym. The realization struck him deeply, but he could not express it openly. He forced a smile onto his face and asked her whether she would continue to follow everything he told her to do. He also questioned whether she truly had no opinion or will of her own and only acted according to his commands. Taeyong slowly came to the realization that he had allowed his temper to take control of his actions and words. As this awareness settled in, he noticed the unusual and troubled expression on Gina's face. Her reaction made him understand that he had spoken too harshly and without thinking. Feeling uneasy, he tried to correct the situation by telling her that he had not meant what he had said earlier. His voice carried a sense of regret as he attempted to soften his statement and take back the emotional weight behind it. In response, Gina reached out and firmly grabbed his hand. She looked at him with sincere eyes and told him that there was no way he could ever give her the wrong answers or wrong commands. She explained that she trusted him completely and believed that everything he said must have a reason behind it. According to her, even if his words sounded strict or confusing, she was certain that his intentions were always correct. Because of that belief, she assured him that she would continue to follow his commands just as she had done before, without hesitation and without doubt. Listening to her words, Taeyong began thinking deeply to himself. He wondered if she truly understood him so well, even though he could not remember much about her at all. He reflected on the fact that she followed every order he gave her, no matter what it was. This made him realize that he did not need to feel afraid of her or suspicious of her loyalty. At the same time, he accepted that he could not take back whatever he had already said. He also knew that provoking or aggravating her any further would only make things worse. Instead of continuing to explain himself or apologize repeatedly, he decided that it would be wiser to use the situation in a more productive way. In his mind, he concluded that it would be better to turn this place into a gym where he could stand as the king and build something powerful from the ground up. With this new determination, Taeyong spoke to Gina again and told her that now that he had officially appointed her as a coach, she had proven herself to be trustworthy. He praised her by saying that she was very reliable and that she had successfully passed his loyalty test. According to him, she was the most suitable person to carry out his mission and support his goals. Hearing this, Gina felt extremely happy and proud. The idea of being chosen for an important mission filled her with excitement, and she immediately asked him if he already had a specific mission in mind. Taeyong hesitated for a short moment before answering her. Then he told her that he did have a clear goal. He explained that his mission was to transform the gym into an elite training center that would be respected and known for its strength. However, he also admitted that they needed a large amount of money to make this dream come true. He reminded her that thanks to her, they had managed to remove the weak members from the gym. While this step was necessary, it also meant that they no longer had any steady income to support their plans. Gina became confused for a brief moment after hearing this. She asked him whether this difficult situation was also part of his original plan. Then, with confidence, she said that she believed she could secure the money they needed. She claimed that she already had an idea and knew a way to earn it. Taeyong looked at her with curiosity and asked if she truly had a plan in her mind or if she was just speaking without thinking it through. She replied that she did have a plan. She explained that she knew a man whose arms looked like cheese pops and that this man had invited her to take part in an underground fighting event. event. As soon as Taeyong heard this, he became alarmed. He immediately told her to stop and warned her that such an event sounded extremely dangerous. He insisted that she should be careful and made it clear that she had no idea how risky and threatening that kind of place could be. However, Gina did not listen to his warning. Instead, she suggested another idea. She said that maybe she should visit all the other gyms in the area and challenge the fighters there one by one. Hearing this, Taeyong quickly stopped her and asked if she thought she was some kind of gangster. He told her that she should do something more normal and reasonable, because her suggestion did not sound suitable to him at all. After that, Gina changed her proposal once again. She said that she could enter an amateur tournament and try to win the prize money instead. However, she also mentioned that women's tournaments usually did not pay very well compared to others. Taeyong then noticed how confident she was about winning. She spoke about the prize money as if it already belonged to her, and as if victory was guaranteed. Thinking more carefully about the idea of a women's tournament, Taeyong considered the possibilities in his mind. After reflecting on it, he finally agreed with her. He said that this option gave her the best chance of success and seemed more realistic than the other risky plans she had suggested. In the end, he concluded that she should go forward with this decision and think about the idea of a women's tournament. Taeyong had gone ahead and printed all the enormous posters which were now displayed prominently outside the gym. The posters loudly proclaimed that the genius Gina Kang was the coach of the facility and emphasized that she offered a weight loss program specifically for women alongside self-defense martial arts classes intended to protect men. Each poster was large, bright, and designed to catch the attention of anyone passing by, with bold lettering and flashy colors. Gina was standing nearby, holding one of the pamphlets in her hand, turning it over as she examined the text and images carefully. She frowned, a look of disbelief and frustration crossing her face. She remarked, with a tone that mixed irritation and disbelief, that she didn't think it was appropriate to refer to her as the genius coach, and that she couldn't comprehend the reason it mentioned weight loss programs and self-defense classes in the same context. Taeyong responded casually, as if it were the simplest thing in the world, explaining that it was normal to exaggerate a little for advertisement purposes, to make things sound more impressive than they actually were. He added that saying flattering things on a poster was standard practice in marketing, and that her actual skills were exactly what the gym needed to attract attention and generate revenue. He reminded her that the main goal was to bring in members, and that the posters were a tool for that purpose. He mentioned that they now needed to begin distributing the pamphlets to potential clients and urged her to get ready for the task ahead. Gina's expression shifted, showing a mix of confusion and frustration. She questioned the reasoning behind the tasks, unable to see the link between distributing flashy posters and turning the gym into an elite facility. She remarked that the programs didn't necessarily need to be limited to women, and she couldn't understand the reason he was so insistent on eliminating co-ed participation altogether. Taeyong simply replied that this was all part of his overarching plan, and that she only needed to follow the instructions and execute the tasks. While saying this, he couldn't help but think to himself about the potential to charge extra for the weight loss program and, in a fleeting personal thought, about making any attractive female member his girlfriend. Gina, momentarily frustrated by both his attitude and his words, noticed a flicker of something in his expression and paused, almost as if she were trying to gauge his seriousness. Taeyong, realizing she had caught him in a private thought, reassured her silently that he genuinely did have a plan in mind and that it wasn't just random or impulsive. Gina, however, still voiced her irritation aloud, saying that dealing with all of this was extremely annoying and trying to convey just how exasperating the situation felt to her. Taeyong, reflecting on her reaction, thought that perhaps he had been overbearing and bossy, realizing that his insistence and commanding tone might have been too much and that he should have approached the situation differently. Finally, Gina addressed him directly, speaking in a tone that combined critique and genuine concern, saying that the posters were terrible in design and messaging. She asked if she could read through them carefully, point by point, to explain exactly what she found wrong. Taeyong, slightly exasperated, responded quickly, telling her not to confuse him further, though his tone suggested that he was at least partially open to her feedback. Gina, determined to make her point, grabbed his hand gently but firmly, saying that she didn't understand what he was saying and wanted him to listen. Taeyong, realizing she was serious and not just complaining, told her it was nothing and then asked her to go ahead and explain everything she found wrong about the posters in detail. Gina began systematically, pointing out first that the Genius Coach label was unnecessary and overstated, making her appear arrogant rather than competent. She then expressed her confusion over the reason the programs were advertised exclusively for women, arguing that it made no sense to limit the audience in such a way. She emphasized that, in her opinion, the posters would likely fail to attract new members or persuade anyone to join, as they seemed exaggerated and disconnected from reality. Taeyong, listening carefully, asked whether she meant that the posters were objectively bad in content and design, or whether she simply didn't like them personally, seeking clarification on her critique. Gina had expressed her opinion that she thought co-ed classes should also be included. Taeyong, on the other hand, could not understand the reason she was so strongly opposed to the idea. He considered a few possibilities in his mind. Perhaps she was embarrassed about her face appearing in the advertisement. Or maybe, he thought, she simply did not realize how the arrangement would work in practice and how effective it could be. There were so many angles to consider, but none of them fully explained the hesitation she displayed. Trying to persuade her, Taeyong spoke carefully, choosing his words with intention. He reminded her that if they went ahead with the plan, they could potentially work less while earning double the money. He emphasized the benefits, explaining that this arrangement could be the most efficient and profitable option they had. In his mind, it seemed obvious that this approach was the best possible way for them to earn a decent income without excessive effort. He hoped that presenting the logic clearly would convince her, yet he noticed her hesitation lingering. Gina hesitated again, which only deepened Taeyong's confusion. He could not comprehend the reason behind her reluctance this time. He had believed that she trusted him and that she would follow his lead when he presented a clear plan. Her hesitation frustrated him more than he cared to admit. He found himself questioning her motives and wondering whether she would ever agree. He thought that maybe he should wait patiently, or he pushed forward regardless of her response. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Turning his back in mild frustration, he resolved that if she was unwilling to participate, he would proceed on his own. He told himself that he had no choice but to wait for her reaction now and accept whatever came next. He shifted his focus to the present, willing to observe her next words carefully. Then, unexpectedly, Gina spoke up. She admitted that she was willing to go along with the plan and that she would do it for him. Relief surged through Taeyong's chest, mingled with a subtle sense of triumph. He felt a spark of happiness and satisfaction, knowing that she had agreed to participate and that his persuasion had succeeded. In that moment, he reflected on the situation and realized that he now understood, in a small but meaningful way, how to influence her decisions. He spoke to her lightly, saying that she should have agreed much sooner. He mentioned that when he was her age, he had always obeyed his seniors without question, never daring to argue or resist. He remembered feeling intimidated, recalling how he had even been afraid to meet their gaze. Sharing this with her, he felt a mixture of authority and a subtle superiority, as if his experience gave him insight she had yet to gain. Taeyong's mind continued to wander over the victory he had just secured. He felt a sense of assertion growing within him, a confidence that she could no longer contradict him easily. The satisfaction was almost intoxicating. He thought about how cleverly he had managed to manipulate the situation to his advantage, and the feeling of control was empowering. He imagined the recurring female members of the gym, and in that image, he saw himself as the central figure, almost like the ruler of his own small domain. The idea made him feel dominant, in a strangely calculated yet satisfying way. He looked at Gina carefully, noticing her features with more attention than before. He thought that she had a pretty face and considered how it might be shaped according to his desires, in a way that suited his plan. But before he could dwell on it further, Gina unexpectedly spoke to him again. Without warning, she delivered a sudden kick, commanding him to go to sleep. The kick was strong and completely unexpected, catching him off guard. The force sent him sprawling to the floor, leaving him stunned for a moment as he tried to regain his bearings. The surprise left him momentarily helpless, and the reality of her strength and assertiveness hit him. As he began to regain consciousness, his mind slowly registered the passage of time. He realized it was late, much later than he had anticipated, and a dull ache was forming in his head. It was strange, he thought, that his head hurt, despite the fact that he had not consumed any alcohol or substances that might explain the pain. He opened his eyes fully and noticed that the surrounding area was completely dark. The lights were off, casting everything into shadow, and the unfamiliar darkness added a sense of tension to the situation. Standing before him was Gina. She noted that he had finally awakened, her presence dominating the space in a quiet, controlled manner. Taeyong's surprise was evident, as he processed what had happened. Only now did he fully realize the force of her earlier kick and the intentionality behind it. His mind raced, remembering the earlier moments when he had assumed she would not continue to assert herself physically. Now, he had to reconsider those assumptions. Both of them were now present in the wrestling field, the unexpected shift in setting adding a layer of intensity to the encounter. Gina's words confirmed that they could finally begin their cardio training here. He couldn't help but wonder if she had completely lost her mind. He reflected that he could never predict what she was thinking or what she might do next. It seemed to him that she had truly gone crazy in a way that was unpredictable and wild, and he even silently blamed himself for believing, even for a moment, that he could somehow control or influence her behavior. As he continued to think about the situation, he realized with growing unease that she was not just eccentric, she was also physically strong, far stronger than he had initially assumed. That made the situation feel increasingly dangerous, and he recognized that he was not in full control of the circumstances. Every second that passed made him more aware of the risk, and he understood that he needed to find a way out of this situation immediately. Then, as he attempted to move, panic struck him that he suddenly realized that he could not move his body at all. The realization made his heart race. He was entirely immobilized, trapped under her presence and strength, and a wave of helplessness washed over him. He looked directly at her and attempted to speak, asking her to get off him. He tried to reason with her calmly, explaining that they should have discussed this properly instead of ending up in such a chaotic position. To his surprise, she responded immediately, saying that there was no way she would move because she knew he would run away the moment she let him go. Taeyong's mind raced as he realized she had effectively locked him in place with her strength. He tried to ask her if she had some specific demand or a particular reason for this strange insistence, wondering if she truly believed that they could perform cardio training in such a bizarre and impossible position. She challenged him in return, questioning whether he actually thought he could train with her like this, and that only made him even more confused. He paused and reflected on the absurdity of the situation. On one hand, he knew clearly that performing cardio like this was impossible, but on the other hand, he realized he had been watching her because she was attractive, and although he did not fully understand her intentions, he could also see that he had no clear reason to refuse her. He pondered this internally, asking himself the reason he felt compelled to resist when there was no logical reason to do so. His thoughts spun around the contradiction, until finally, after a long internal debate, he signaled inwardly that it was fine and decided to agree to perform the wholesome workout session in that spot. Even as he made that decision, he remained perplexed. It seemed completely irrational that she had attacked him just to force him into training with her, yet that was exactly how it appeared. He considered that perhaps she was using her physical strength deliberately to ensure they could train together. Trying to regain a sense of control, he asked her politely to release him first, suggesting that they could have a proper and structured wholesome workout session if she wanted to. She, however, remained unwavering. She said she would not get off him and instructed him not to say anything more. He attempted to inquire whether there was some underlying problem, but she repeated insistently that he would try to run away. He reminded her that she had already said the same thing earlier, and then, with a hint of desperation, he asked again if she truly wanted to exercise with him. She answered that they could perform the training in whatever way he preferred. At that point, he made a decision and agreed, telling her he would comply, but he asked her first to clear the path around him because, in the current position, it was physically impossible for him to move or engage properly. She responded in a teasing and challenging tone, saying that he should have used his own strength to remove her himself. He began to think that perhaps she was deliberately trying to frustrate him, even torturing him with the repetition of the same demands and behavior. He grew exasperated and started raising his voice, asking what she actually intended to do, emphasizing that it was physically impossible to conduct a proper cardio training session in this way. After a moment of tension, he paused to collect himself. She then calmly stated that she would remain there and that he should tell her whatever he wanted to say so that it would work for both of them. He reflected internally, trying to understand her words, and found himself puzzled and thinking if this correlates with the situation at hand. Perhaps, he thought, she had intended to assert her control from the beginning, but he could not understand the reason she was avoiding being direct when he had already decided to train with her despite being attacked. Eventually, he resolved to let her have her way and told her to proceed however she wanted from that moment on. She paused briefly and then said that she would do whatever he instructed her to do, though she admitted that she did not know where to start. He reassured her that there was nothing special about the wholesome workout session and that she only needed to perform it in a normal and straightforward way. Clearly, she lacked a proper understanding of how the training should be conducted. He then suggested that they could discuss the details later because he needed to focus and concentrate first. He also considered the possibility that she might be misinterpreting his actions and intentions, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. Finally, after all the confusion, hesitation, and tension, both of them began performing the wholesome workout session together. As they moved, Taeyoung's mind continued to whirl, still trying to process the bizarre series of events that had led to this point. He reminded himself to focus on the session, despite not fully comprehending the reasoning behind her insistence or the intensity of her initial attack. Yet, as chaotic as it all had been, he realized that they had now started the training together. Taeyoung was cleaning the wrestling area the next morning, moving slowly as his body felt unusually heavy and worn out. He was clearly exhausted, his movements lacking energy, and every time he blinked, his eyelids felt like they weighed a ton. As he continued cleaning, he reflected on the cardio training session he had gone through with Gina. He had not expected her to train him so intensely or for such a long duration, and it struck him that she seemed almost superhuman. She moved like a professional athlete, full of energy and determination, and he wondered how anyone could maintain such stamina. He considered that maybe she never really got tired of exercise and training sessions. Even now, in the early morning hours, her face still appeared bright and glowing, almost as if nothing could wear her down. He assumed that her energy came from the fact that she had been performing the training regularly, but he still could not make sense of the reason she behaved in the way she did. He started thinking more deeply about her, trying to figure out the person behind the surface. He felt that there was something about her he did not yet understand, some hidden quality or secret motivation that remained invisible to him. She often spoke as though she had known him for a long time, and that made him feel that there was more to her than she let on. He could not shake the thought that she was hiding something, that she possessed knowledge or experiences that he had no clue about. All he truly knew was that she insisted on training with him, sometimes intensely, sometimes in ways that seemed almost aggressive, like the time she had accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, kicked him in the face. She could be unpredictable, acting like a completely different person in each moment, and this unpredictability made her feel almost lunatic in his eyes. He could not imagine being able to communicate with her like with a normal person. He began to regret his decision to get involved in her training routines, thinking that maybe it would have been safer to avoid her altogether. He questioned whether he could trust that she would not hurt him again, whether he could ever feel completely safe around her, and the thought made him uneasy. While he was lost in these tangled thoughts, suddenly, Gina appeared behind him. Her presence startled him, and he jumped slightly, caught completely off guard by her sudden approach. She asked him gently if something was bothering him, if there was something that seemed to be troubling him or causing discomfort. Her voice carried concern, and it made him feel unexpectedly observed. Surprised and a little flustered, he asked her whether she had finished showering. She replied calmly that she had, but she could not understand the reason he looked so surprised at her presence. She reassured him that if someone was causing him trouble or picking on him, he should not hesitate to tell her. She said she would protect him, that he did not need to worry when she was around. Her words made him realize just how strong and capable she was, and the thought that she was standing there ready to defend him brought a mix of relief and frustration. He felt frustrated because, on one hand, it was flattering to know someone so strong was concerned for him, but on the other hand, he did not want to appear weak or incapable. Trying to regain his composure, he responded that no one was bothering him and that he was fully capable of taking care of himself. He wanted to assert his independence and remind her that he did not need anyone's protection. She listened and then told him that if that were the case, she felt relieved. She went on to say that even if the situation was not about someone bothering him, he could still talk to her whenever he wanted. She encouraged him to train with her as long as he felt comfortable, reinforcing that she was there for him not just for protection, but for companionship during their workouts. As he listened to her, Taeyoung began to realize that she had a unique way of keeping him motivated. He understood that she always managed to make training feel exciting, and he wondered if she might have intentions beyond simply using him for workouts. Perhaps she genuinely wanted him as a training partner, someone to share the experience with, and maybe even liked him in some way. But almost immediately, he dismissed that thought. He convinced himself that there was no way she could like him romantically. He internally scolded himself to stop imagining things and to not allow her actions to feel like she was marking her territory around him. He firmly decided that he did not want her to behave in that way again, and he resolved to maintain his boundaries. Trying to smooth over the awkwardness, he casually told her that he had only been thinking out loud and that she did not need to worry about it. Simultaneously, he reminded himself that he was not some kind of mind reader and he could not possibly know what she was thinking. To stay safe and protect his own peace of mind, he resolved that he should avoid her whenever possible and keep his distance. Spaz! At least until he could make sense of his own feelings. Just as he was lost in these thoughts, the large glass door of the gym suddenly swung open, and another girl entered the room. She looked around curiously before speaking, mentioning that she had seen the poster about the weight loss program and was interested in learning more. Gina was visibly very shocked when she noticed another girl walking into the gym, her eyes widening slightly as she muttered that there was actually someone interested in the poster. She seemed caught off guard by the unexpected visitor, as if she had not anticipated that anyone would respond to the advertisement. Taeyong, noticing Gina's reaction and wanting to calm the situation, reassured her calmly, telling her that there was absolutely nothing wrong with his poster and that she should simply forget about everything, letting it go without making a fuss. After this brief exchange between them, both Taeyong and Gina turned their attention to the new visitor and began engaging in conversation with her. Taeyong introduced himself politely, saying that he was the manager of the gym and giving his full name, Taeyong Jin. The girl responded politely and warmly, introducing herself as Dahyun-sung. She smiled lightly and added that everyone could simply call her Dahyun, as she preferred a more casual form of address. Taeyong, wanting her to feel comfortable, offered her some tea and invited her to relax, telling her to take her time and enjoy the drink. Dahyun responded with a bright smile, expressing her gratitude sincerely and saying thank you so much for that. She added casually that these days things had been going very well, speaking with an easy tone that reflected her polite and friendly nature. While observing Dahyun closely, Gina couldn't help but observe her balloons. She leaned slightly towards Taeyong and remarked that her own melons were bigger than Dahyun's, almost as if she were trying to compare herself, though it seemed she was quietly wondering if some subtle feeling of jealousy was arising within her. Taeyong noticed the observation, but remained composed, though internally he found Dahyun's melons striking, catching his attention immediately. He realized that the thought of performing training sessions with her sparked a certain excitement within him. Dahyun, having observed the slight exchange between Gina and Taeyong, sensed a subtle tension and curiosity in the air. She asked politely if there was any particular matter between the two of them, pointing out that Taeyong had gone quiet all of a sudden. Taeyong quickly reassured her that there was nothing at all, explaining that it had merely been a conversation he had been having with the coach before she arrived, and that it was nothing for her to worry about. Almost immediately, he shifted the topic in a smooth and natural way, asking Dahyun if she had noticed the standing signboard outside the gym. Dahyun admitted, with a slight blush of embarrassment, that she had indeed noticed it. She confessed that she had been gaining quite a bit of weight since her marriage, and that the weight loss program advertised on the poster was exactly what she needed the most at that moment. Taeyong listened carefully, absorbing her words and considering them thoughtfully. He realized that she was married, yet despite her admission, her overall appearance, particularly her eyes, made her look youthful and vibrant. In his observation, she did not appear to have gained as much weight as she seemed to think. He let out a small, light laugh and reassured her gently that he truly did not think she needed to lose any weight. He complimented her sincerely, telling her that she was very beautiful and fashionable, and he even joked lightly that her husband might get anxious if she became any prettier than she already was. Dahyun's eyes widened in surprise at his words, and she responded with a soft laugh, saying that she thought her husband probably had a different opinion about her appearance. Taeyong, reflecting on her words quietly, considered that perhaps Dahyun was experiencing some challenges in her marriage. Maybe she no longer attended cardio sessions with her husband, or perhaps they had grown distant over time. He thought to himself that a married woman who sought affection and attention from her spouse might be open to a caring approach through training. In his mind, he imagined guiding her, showing kindness and attention in a way that could help her feel valued and appreciated. He visualized the training sessions, thinking about the opportunity to interact with her in a manner that would allow him to provide support, encouragement, and guidance. With that decision made internally, he turned back to Dahyun and addressed her warmly, suggesting that she should consider signing up for the classes. He mentioned that she was the very first person to arrive that day, which made her enrollment a special occasion. To make her feel welcome and appreciated, he informed her that he would provide a 20% discount on her classes, emphasizing that this was a gesture specifically for her. Dahyun smiled in response, showing appreciation for the thoughtfulness. Dahyun felt a surge of happiness wash over her when she heard about the discount. Suddenly, Gina stepped in and stopped Taeyoung for a brief moment. He turned to her, noticing the pause, and reassured her that it was fine. He said that Dahyun would be the first official member of their joint gym. After Dahyun had carefully filled out the membership form, she looked up with a hint of curiosity and concern and asked if she had completed all the sections that were marked with stars. She wanted to be sure that she had not missed anything important. Taeyoung, noticing her attentiveness, nodded and told her that she had indeed filled out every necessary part and that everything was in order. The simplicity of this exchange, however, seemed to have a noticeable effect on Gina. She became increasingly uncomfortable, almost restless, as she watched them interact so casually. Unable to contain herself, Gina leaned slightly toward Taeyoung. He immediately noticed the movement and looked at her, concerned. He asked if something was wrong, genuinely curious, and a little puzzled by the sudden change in her demeanor. Gina, in a quiet but firm tone, told him that he smelled like something unusual. She added that she thought the smell had been lingering since the previous night. Taeyoung froze for a moment, completely surprised by her comment. He blinked, trying to process her words, and asked for clarification. He couldn't understand the reason she was sniffing him so closely, the reason she was paying such attention to a detail he hadn't even considered. As he thought about it more carefully, he began to realize that she must be referring to the cardio training session they had shared the night before. A slow wave of understanding hit him, and with it, a twinge of concern. In that instant, he concluded that Gina had probably gone a little overboard with her behavior. He thought to himself that if she continued acting in such an intense and radical way, it might even scare new customers away. Meanwhile, Dahyun spoke up in her calm and reassuring voice, trying to diffuse the tension. She explained that it was normal for people to have a certain smell after working out. She mentioned that she was used to being around people who exercised regularly, and that the scent of sweat was something she had long accepted as natural. Her words were gentle, meant to put him at ease, but they also made him suddenly aware of something he had not fully acknowledged until that moment. He really did smell from the previous activities. The realization struck him quickly, and Gina remembered the attempt she had made earlier at marking his territory, only to recognize that it had clearly not worked as intended. He thought for a moment, considering that perhaps there was another way to handle the situation, a more subtle approach that could correct the earlier failure. Taking a deep breath, he moved slightly closer to Dahyun and asked her quietly if he truly smelled. There was a hint of vulnerability in his voice, an unspoken need for reassurance. Dahyun, noticing his concern, laughed softly. Her laughter was light, teasing, and a little amused, and she told him that she had not meant it in the way he was probably thinking. All this time, Gina observed the interaction with a close, almost penetrating gaze. She noticed the casual and normal manner in which Dahyun and Taeyoung were speaking to each other. Her mind raced as she thought about their dynamic. She recalled that because she and Taeyoung had shared the intense cardio training session together, and because she had even tried to assert her presence over him in subtle ways, she might need to act more forcefully to maintain her position. The thought of having to intervene weighed on her. But at the same time, she reminded herself that Taeyoung is exactly the type of customer she had always wanted. The idea of inadvertently scaring Dahyun away made her hesitate. She didn't want to risk losing the connection they were beginning to form over something so trivial. Steeling herself, Gina decided that she should take action, but carefully. She called out Taeyoung's name, her voice firm, but measured, designed to capture his attention without startling him. In her mind, she resolved that she needed to leave a strong impression on him to ensure that he would not stray or disregard her in the future. Meanwhile, Taeyoung's eyes lingered on Gina, trying to read the subtle expressions playing across her face. He noticed a strange intensity, a peculiar weight in her gaze that made him pause. Something about the way she looked at him felt different, almost ominous, as if her expression were silently issuing a warning. He thought to himself that there was definitely something wrong, that her look carried a silent message, a sort of unspoken death notice that made him uneasy. Taeyong could not understand Gina's sudden shift in attention and behavior at all. He kept thinking that he should have stopped her earlier when he had the chance. At the same time, another thought crossed his mind that there was no possible way he could stop her on his own. In his imagination, only a highly trained team could control her once she became this intense. The situation made him feel nervous and trapped, and he began to believe that the safest option was to escape before things became worse. With that thought, he decided that he needed to get out of the area immediately and mentally activated what he called his emergency eject plan. While these thoughts were racing through his mind, Taeyong was seated in front of Dahyun, who was carefully filling out the form placed on the desk between them. He tried to sound calm and asked her if she had finished writing everything down. Dahyun looked at the paper again and replied that she was almost done and only needed a few more moments. At the same time, Gina was calling out Taeyong's name repeatedly from behind them, but he chose to ignore her voice completely. Instead of turning around, he forced himself to focus on Dahyun and the form in front of him. After Dahyun finally completed the form, Taeyong leaned forward to examine it closely. He told her that it appeared she had filled out all the important and required sections properly. He then suggested that they should continue their conversation while he walked her outside. His tone sounded hurried, as if he wanted to end the interaction as quickly as possible. Dahyun noticed his behavior and felt slightly confused by it. Dahyun asked him whether he was in some kind of hurry. She pointed out that it felt as though he had suddenly started rushing everything without any clear reason. Taeyong replied that they still had work to do and explained that he would tell her everything while walking her out of the gym. He then asked her directly if she was ready to leave. Dahyun became surprised when she heard him mention work. The word made her pause because she had not expected him to say that at that moment. Taeyong quickly clarified that it was not something new and that it was simply related to the discussion he and the coach had talked about earlier. Dahyun then remembered what he had told her before she arrived. She said that he had already mentioned that he needed to have an important discussion with the coach before she came. Taeyong confirmed this by nodding and agreeing with her. Dahyun suddenly felt embarrassed by her own reaction and called herself foolish for forgetting such a simple thing. She then said that she should leave now and not disturb him any longer. Taeyong tried to stop her and suggested that she wait for a moment. However, Dahyun insisted that she would come back another time and see him again later. Taeyong offered once more to walk her out of the gym, wanting to be polite and respectful. Dahyun refused gently and told him that it was fine and that he did not need to worry about her. She said goodbye to him and then walked out of the gym on her own. Once Dahyun had left, Taeyong found himself standing alone with Gina inside the gym. The air between them felt strange and uncomfortable. There was an unusual tension that neither of them spoke about directly. Taeyong suddenly started thinking that Gina believed he had tried to escape with Dahyun and leave her behind. This thought made him feel anxious and guilty at the same time. Gina then moved closer and hit him lightly to get his attention. Taeyong reacted immediately and told her not to hit him. He said that instead of using her hands, she should talk to him properly. He added that she should explain everything clearly and not scare him as if she were about to kill him. His words were filled with fear and frustration because he truly believed she was angry enough to hurt him. Gina stood silently behind him without responding right away. She did not raise her hand again or say anything for a moment. At that time, Taeyong realized that most of his fear came from his own frustration and overthinking. In his mind, he believed that Gina was about to attack him. He thought that she had already beaten him many times before and that she would surely do it again. He was convinced that she would hit him at any second. However, in reality, she was only standing there quietly and doing nothing. After a brief pause, Gina stepped closer to him and finally spoke. She told him that she had already known that he liked her more than the customer. She also said that she felt the same way toward him. To her, this feeling was what mattered the most. Hearing these words shocked Taeyong deeply. He had not expected such a confession, and it left him speechless for a moment. Inside his mind, Taeyong thought that he could not understand her words at all. He had been preparing himself to hear something harsh or threatening. He believed she would scold him or tell him that he deserved punishment for what he had done. He had been certain that she was going to beat him, but that did not happen. Instead, she spoke calmly and emotionally. Taeyong remembered that Gina had threatened to kill him earlier, and now he could not understand the reason she had suddenly changed her mind. This sudden shift confused him even more. He wondered if her change in behavior was because she had become jealous of Dahyun. He thought that maybe seeing Dahyun with him had made her feel insecure. He also considered that perhaps everything was fine now, but even then, he could not fully understand the true reason behind her reaction. His thoughts continued to circle around the same questions. He could not clearly decide whether Gina was angry, jealous, or simply misunderstood the situation. All he knew was that her words had surprised him and left him uncertain about what she really felt. Finally, Taeyong looked directly at Gina and asked her if there was any possible reason why she did not seem very fond of Miss Dahyun. Gina told Taeyong that she did not really know anything about Dahyun yet, so she felt it was far too early to make any kind of judgment about her character or intentions. She admitted hesitantly that she did not know whether she liked Dahyun or not, and that uncertainty itself was troubling. But what weighed on her mind even more was the thought of another woman wandering around him, spending time with him, and being close to him in ways that she could not control. She explained that while other women might teach him things or spend time with him in his presence, she was always the one who had to deal with the aftermath. She would be the one who had to clean up whatever mess was left behind, to pick up the pieces, and to manage the consequences of those interactions. Hearing her speak like this, Taeyong suddenly realized with a sinking feeling in his chest that he had really screwed himself over. He knew that there was no simple way to get out of this situation, no easy explanation that could save him from the consequences of his actions. He thought to himself in disbelief, realizing that Gina was essentially saying she would not allow any other woman to come anywhere near him. The thought made his head spin slightly. On top of that, he reflected bitterly that he had somehow ended up doing cardio training with someone who seemed entirely determined to undermine the foundation of his so-called harem. It was as if fate had decided to punish him, placing him in the middle of this complicated web of trust, jealousy, and possessiveness. He felt a twinge of regret, thinking that perhaps he should have just calmed himself down earlier, taken a moment to think through the situation, and acted more carefully instead of reacting impulsively. Still, he tried to maintain some composure and asked her, a little defensively, whether she truly did not trust him. He pointed out, trying to lighten the tension, that she was acting as if she were marking her territory over him, as if claiming him in some way. Gina responded firmly, reminding him that she had seen the way he looked at Dahyun, and that was the reason she felt uneasy. She did not need further explanation that the way he had looked at her was enough to raise doubts and insecurities in her mind. Listening to her, Taeyong realized that he could not fully understand the depth of her feelings or the reasons behind her desire to maintain such close control over him. He then asked her carefully if she could not trust him, then the reason had she not simply come along with him instead of doubting him from a distance. It was a rhetorical point meant to make her think, but it also reflected his desire for clarity and transparency in their relationship. In his mind, he calculated that if she was becoming so obsessed with him, then perhaps he just needed to make her feel secure, to make her feel as if she had him all to herself and that no one else could take him away. It was a subtle realization. After this intense exchange, the two of them ended up in the men's locker room. Gina's eyes immediately began to scan the space, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with careful attention. She noticed the layout, the benches, the lockers, the mirrors, and the general atmosphere of the room. She observed every little detail, as if trying to understand the reason he had brought her here and what exactly he intended. Her curiosity was evident, mixed with a cautious wariness. Finally, she asked him directly the reason he had brought her to this particular place. She needed an explanation, something that would make sense of the sudden change in location. She also inquired whether they were going to conduct their wholesome workout session in the men's locker room again. Clearly confused and uncertain about what his plans were, Taeyong realized, with a mixture of caution and amusement, that Gina had agreed to perform the wholesome workout session with him solely because of her obsession with him. He understood clearly that her feelings were intense and persistent, and he also knew, with a certain strategic calculation, that her obsession would grow even stronger if he acted as though she already had everything she desired. He considered carefully how he should handle the situation, aware that his words and actions would influence her emotions and reactions significantly. He reminded himself of what he had told her the day before, that she was the only one he had ever truly cared for, the only one who held any real place in his heart, and this was precisely the reason he focused all his attention on her, deliberately ignoring everyone else around them. He noticed the subtle surprise on her face as he made this clear, and it gave him a small sense of satisfaction to see that his words had a direct effect on her. Taeyong emphasized, firmly and without hesitation, that he was not joking or speaking lightly, and he watched as Gina moved closer to him, the intensity of her emotions evident in her eyes. She admitted almost shyly yet with certainty, that she had always known deep down that he would choose her in the end. She expressed her willingness to follow his instructions without question, promising to do everything he had taught her, to comply with his guidance, and above all, to make him happy. Her determination was palpable, and as she reached out to grab his hand, Taeyong felt the force of her grip. He thought, almost reflexively, that she might break his wrist, yet he quickly reminded himself that everything she was doing was part of the dynamic he had carefully considered. He understood that he could not allow her to manipulate him like she had the previous day. He suggested to her that they should continue with the cardio training, performing it in the same way they had the day before. However, this time he proposed that they act as if they were a couple, allowing themselves to feel a connection, a warmth in their hearts that mirrored the affection they were pretending to share. Internally, he was surprised by his own suggestion, and he found himself reflecting on the irony of the situation. He realized with a certain self-awareness that this approach, this mixture of control and guidance, was how he had always dealt with similar situations. Yet he also recognized, quietly, that he had no true understanding of what love actually felt like. He admitted to himself that he could not explain love to her because he had never experienced it fully himself. Despite this, he resolved that he would maintain control of the situation, ensuring that she would not push or overwhelm him as she had done the previous day. He instructed her to follow every command he gave, and she accepted immediately, responding with a confident and willing counternex. Yes, showing no hesitation. He began to prepare her for the training, carefully demonstrating what she needed to do, guiding her movements with attention and precision. She paused for a moment, asking politely for a short time to prepare herself, to collect her thoughts and focus before they began. In a sudden, unexpected turn, they kissed, a brief but intense moment of closeness that took them both by surprise. Without missing a beat, they began performing the wholesome workout session together. As they continued, immersed in the shared intensity of the workout, Dahyun accidentally walked in and witnessed the scene. The sight of them together was unexpected, but Taeyong chose immediately not to panic or react outwardly. He maintained his composure, keeping his attention on the training session. Taeyong woke up after taking a nap, feeling groggy and disoriented. Even though he had rested, he realized almost immediately that his body still felt weak, heavy, and strangely sore. He murmured to himself that he had had a good nap, but it didn't seem to have done him much good. His mind wandered back to the earlier exercise session, and a sudden worry struck him that perhaps he had passed out again while working out. Confusion and frustration bubbled up inside him. He could not understand the reason this kept happening, the reason he kept losing control over his own body, and the reason his strength seemed to betray him at such critical moments. He thought bitterly to himself that he had really screwed up this time. The frustration was compounded by a sharp ache in his cheeks that made him wince. He didn't even understand the reason his face hurt so much, and that small mystery only added to his sense of discomfort and irritation. As he sat there, trying to sort through his swirling thoughts, Gina quietly appeared from behind him. Her sudden presence startled him slightly, and he instinctively turned to look at her. She greeted him softly, saying that he was awake now. Taeyong's eyes met hers, and with a mix of concern and confusion, he asked if he had passed out again. Gina hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully, before responding. Then, almost in a rush, she began to apologize. She said she was truly sorry for everything that had happened. She reminded him that he had told her earlier that he was tired, but she admitted that she had misunderstood him. She confessed that she had assumed he was being shy or trying to teach her something, or perhaps that he had been speaking to provoke a reaction from her. She had never considered that he could actually be so exhausted that he might pass out entirely. Hearing her words, Taeyong felt a wave of conflicting emotions. On one hand, he realized that he needed to stop presenting himself as weak or vulnerable in front of her, to stop letting his exhaustion show too plainly. He clenched his jaw slightly as he resolved not to give her the satisfaction of seeing him falter so easily. On the other hand, Gina continued speaking, her tone filled with regret and concern. She admitted she had never anticipated that he would be pushed so far that he would actually collapse. She repeated her apology, emphasizing that she had never intended to put him in danger with her reckless actions. As he listened to her, Taeyong couldn't help but question the sincerity of her words and thinking if she really meant what she said. Or was this just another display of her obsession with him? The thought that she might end up harming him, even unintentionally, gnawed at the back of his mind. He briefly considered telling her to stay away from him, to never show herself in front of him again. Before he could act on any of those thoughts, Gina interrupted his internal deliberation. She told him that she had apologized and that he did not need to respond with anger or coldness. She said he did not need to behave in a distant or harsh way toward her. Her words took him by surprise. He wondered, with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity, how she could seem to know exactly what he was thinking, and asking if she could read his mind so accurately. Gina, noticing his astonishment, reassured him that she could not read his mind, but refused to let him leave in such a state. Her gaze hardened with determination as she told him that he belonged to her forever. Taeyong's immediate reaction was to point out the danger of her obsession. He told her that she was clearly obsessed with him and that her behavior was not only intense but also risky, potentially destructive. It was the kind of obsession that could never lead to a healthy relationship. Yet, even as he considered rejecting her outright, he recognized an opportunity. He realized that he could take advantage of her feelings while they were so strong and vulnerable. He then reassured her, saying that everything was fine, and acknowledged that he himself had overworked his body while trying to manage her affections and prove his own feelings toward her. He wanted her to understand that the strain he endured had been worth it, and he subtly tested her commitment by asking if she was now ready to take him seriously. Gina responded without hesitation, agreeing that she would listen to him from now on, that she would follow his guidance and be more careful in her actions. Taeyong reflected inwardly, realizing that if he could guide her into such obedience, she would become less of an obstacle as he pursued his larger personal ambitions. Finally, he brought up one lingering concern. He wanted to know if anything unusual or dangerous had happened while he was unconscious during the moments he could not remember. Gina replied that nothing had happened, though a strange expression crossed her face briefly, adding a subtle note of ambiguity to her words. Taeyong, wary, asked again to confirm whether she was truly telling the truth. When she reassured him that nothing had occurred, he finally relaxed slightly. He noted that it was getting very late and suggested that they should head home. As they prepared to leave, Gina paused and asked if he wanted her to buy some grilled eel on the way home. Taeyong, still eager to rest and not interested in any detour, declined politely and said that he simply wanted to go straight home. Taeyong asked Gina to clean the gym thoroughly and also to hand out some posters to the people passing by outside. Gina hesitated at first, looking at the posters and commenting that they were very messy and disorganized. She seemed frustrated for a moment, clearly uneasy about the task. After a short pause, however, she reluctantly agreed, saying she would do whatever he asked. Taeyong responded calmly, telling her that he would be in his office and that any customers who arrived should be brought directly to him without delay. Gina nodded and then left to carry out his instructions. Once she was gone, Taeyong settled into his office chair and began reflecting on the situation. He noticed how unusually obedient Gina had become and how focused she was on following his instructions without complaint. He thought to himself that her sudden compliance was probably because he had passed out the previous night, and perhaps she was taking advantage of the opportunity to act more dutifully. He also thought that he might have passed out too late, and that if he had done so sooner, things might have turned out differently. His mind then drifted to yesterday's events, and he reminded himself that nothing particularly unusual had happened. This meant that Dahyun had managed to leave without being noticed or caught, which both relieved and intrigued him. He then considered Dahyun, recalling that he had initially assumed she was just an ordinary woman, someone who struggled with her husband and therefore seemed like an easy target for his plans. However, he realized that his assumptions had been completely wrong. Dahyun had not only stayed to watch him and Gina during the intense cardio training session, but she had also recorded parts of it. He concluded silently that she must be a very unusual and unpredictable girl, unlike anyone he had expected. Despite his relief that she hadn't been caught, he also felt a quiet sense of disappointment and regret. He was ashamed to admit that he might not get another chance to see her, even though he had wanted to continue the cardio training with her. Just as these thoughts filled his mind, Gina entered the office to inform him that a customer had arrived. Startled by her sudden appearance, Taeyong lost his balance and fell out of his chair. Gina, equally surprised by the incident, rushed to check on him, her voice filled with concern. She asked repeatedly if he was okay, worried that he might have been hurt in the fall. Taeyong quickly reassured her, insisting that it was nothing serious, and told her to bring the customer into his office immediately. Internally, he worried about the timing, realizing that this arrival was completely unexpected and that he had no idea who it could be. To his astonishment, Dahyun walked into the office. Seeing her again, he froze for a moment, completely taken aback. He could hardly believe that she had returned after everything that had happened the previous day. In his mind, he scolded her for being so bold, thinking that she was shameless for coming back so soon. Yet at the same time, he felt a mix of curiosity and surprise at her unexpected return. Dahyun, for her part, explained politely that she had felt ashamed for having to leave early yesterday due to his meeting. She asked if they were busy today, speaking in a calm and considerate tone. Both Taeyong and Gina assured her that they were not occupied and that she need not worry. Dahyun then suggested that Gina take a seat with them rather than remain standing near the door. Gina complied and entered the room, taking a seat as instructed. Dahyun then asked Gina how she had been yesterday, which caused Gina to make a slightly unusual and thoughtful expression on her face. After a brief pause, Gina responded that she had been fine, thanks to Dahyun's help, her tone softening with a hint of gratitude. Dahyun mentioned that she felt glad, but also very surprised at first. She seemed to still be processing everything that had happened the day before. Taeyong noticed the same sentiment as he listened quietly to their conversation about the previous day's events. As he observed both of them, he could not help feel slightly puzzled. He kept thinking that he did not understand the reason they were suddenly acting as if they were so close, almost as if a bond had formed overnight. What struck him the most was Gina's behavior. She appeared unusually gentle, almost docile when interacting with Dahyun. It was not the same assertive, bold personality he had seen the day before. He paused for a moment in his thoughts, trying to make sense of this sudden shift, wondering what could have prompted such a drastic change in her demeanor. Gina, noticing his attention, stepped closer to him and leaned in just enough to whisper into his ear. She told him softly that Dahyun was a very kind lady. The words caught him off guard, not only because of what she said, but also because of the tone she used. It was almost tender, almost reverent, and it made him pause mid-thought. Dahyun, hearing Gina's words, laughed lightly and said that she could hear her, but she appreciated the compliment nonetheless. Her laughter was genuine and light, yet it made Taeyong even more surprised because it highlighted the contrast between Gina's usual attitude and her current one. He reflected internally, astonished that Gina was acting almost like a spokesperson for Dahyun, defending and praising her as if it were her duty. That was certainly not the behavior he had witnessed the day before. Yesterday, Gina had been completely different, but now she had softened considerably. He could not shake the feeling that something was off. He started analyzing the situation in his mind, suspecting that there was some underlying motive or reason for this sudden politeness. He reasoned that he should not be surprised to see Gina act in such unpredictable ways that she had always had a tendency to behave unpredictably, especially when provoked or confronted with unusual circumstances. At the same time, he recognized that he had overworked himself the day before, and perhaps that exhaustion had made Gina less wary of other women than she might normally be. Taeyong finally decided to address the situation directly. He turned to Gina and told her that he wanted to speak to the customer in private and asked her to leave the room for a while. Gina responded calmly, assuring him that it was perfectly fine and that she would step out if that was what he wished. She added that she was not worried at all because he was with Dahyun, her tone confident yet casual. After speaking, she quietly left the room and closed the door behind her, leaving him and Dahyun alone. Once the door had shut, Taeyong told Dahyun that they should continue. However, as he spoke, he could not stop thinking about what Dahyun might have done to Gina to make her suddenly so polite. He wondered how much influence Dahyun had over her behavior, though he reminded himself that no method Dahyun might be using could really work on him. He then turned his attention to Dahyun and asked her about her actions the previous day, trying to understand exactly what had occurred. Dahyun replied that she did not understand what he meant. Taeyong, growing more serious, told her that he had been peeping on them the day before and had even gone so far as to record them. He explained that he had not expected her to return after doing something so brazen. In fact, he admitted to himself that he had thought she would never come back. He expressed to her that her behavior was shameless, and this completely shocked Dahyun. She had not anticipated that he would confront her so directly, and she realized that the gravity of her actions was hitting him hard. Dahyun quickly tried to defend herself, saying that she was truly sorry but that she had helped him in the end. Her words surprised him even more, prompting him to ask her to clarify exactly what she meant. Dahyun explained carefully that after he had passed out, the coach had been physically aggressive toward him, beating him until he regained consciousness. She had intervened, stopping the coach, and helped move him to a safer place. She then asked whether he had been unaware of this. At that moment, Taeyong realized something important, that Dahyun had already been caught in the situation yesterday. and he had failed to fully recognize the consequences of it at the time. His mind raced as he tried to understand the reason Gina had not told him anything about what had happened. He remembered thinking that they were all in extreme danger, yet Gina had remained quietly detached. This inconsistency puzzled him deeply. He also considered the possibility that Gina might have been thinking that Da-hyun could attempt to blackmail them with the video she had recorded. The thought made him cautious, and he decided that he would need to investigate that matter carefully later. However, for the moment, he resolved that he needed to address Da-hyun's actions first. Taeyong told her that if she had not been watching them, he would not have overworked himself to the point of passing out. Da-hyun seemed genuinely surprised by this statement and asked if he really meant what he said. He replied that he was the one who should be complaining, as he had initially believed her to be a complete stranger with no concern for boundaries. He reminded her that she should not have stood there observing them while they were doing something private. Feeling embarrassed, Da-hyun apologized, acknowledging her wrongdoing. Nevertheless, Taeyong continued, pointing out that she had not only stood there watching, but had even gone so far as to record them. He emphasized that he had never imagined anyone would have the audacity to do such a thing right in front of him. Da-hyun began trembling slightly, a clear sign of her nervousness. Taeyong observed her and tried to interpret her intentions. He considered the possibility that she had not meant to watch him deliberately. Instead, perhaps she had become excited by the scene, and maybe she had even been motivated by a desire to participate in the same kind of cardio training with her husband. The thought gave him a sense of temporary advantage, a feeling that he now had the upper hand in the situation. He realized that he might be able to exert control, using the knowledge of her actions to influence her behavior. Suddenly, Da-hyun shouted sharply at him, telling him to shut up and pay attention. She insisted that she also wanted to participate in the same cardio training with him. Then, in a move that completely shocked him, she showed him the video she had recorded and threatened that if he refused, she would leak it. Taeyong told Da-hyun that he did not want to do that. Da-hyun, looking puzzled and a little hurt, immediately asked him the reason he felt that way, genuinely wanting to understand his reasoning. Taeyong replied that it was because he had nothing to lose. He tried to convey the simplicity of his perspective, hoping she would see it as harmless and logical. However, the moment she heard his words, she began to tremble slightly, standing there silently, and tears started to form in her eyes. She could not hold them back and quietly began crying. Taeyong, noticing her distress, quickly tried to reassure her. He told her that he was not cheating on anyone and that in his view, there was nothing wrong with doing cardio training in the gym with someone who was also single. He wanted her to understand that his intentions were innocent, that this was merely a workout, nothing more. Da-hyun, still emotional, asked the reason he would say something like that so directly. She hesitated for a moment and then added that she also did cardio training with him and, almost jokingly but with a hint of seriousness, threatened to leak the video if he did not agree. She insisted, almost desperately, that he had not come there to hear such a thing, trying to justify her reaction and make sense of the situation in her own mind. Da-hyun then tried to regain her composure and told him to calm down, emphasizing that she was a married woman and that she should not be involved in anything that could be misinterpreted. Taeyong, feeling a mix of exasperation and quiet amusement at the situation, countered gently but firmly, telling her that he thought she was the one who needed to calm down. Da-hyun shot back sharply, saying that it would be she who was having an affair if she participated in cardio training with him. She said it quickly, with a mix of defensiveness and embarrassment, as if trying to convince both him and herself at the same time. Taeyong, observing her closely, thought to himself that she was overanalyzing everything, sitting there lost in her own thoughts. He realized internally that he had never even planned to have a wholesome workout session with her, and yet she was reacting as though he had done something inappropriate. Her mind seemed to be racing, jumping to conclusions that were not grounded in reality. After a while, the tension between them eased slightly, and they decided to have tea together. They moved to a quieter spot and sat down, the tea between them acting as a small bridge over the awkwardness that lingered. Finally, Taeyong asked if she had calmed down. Da-hyun looked at him, her eyes still slightly wet from earlier, and admitted that she had. She apologized sincerely, her voice soft and hesitant, asking if he could forgive her for her behavior and for everything she had said. She emphasized that she had truly not intended to speak or act that way, hoping that he could understand her confusion and her sudden emotional reaction. Taeyong nodded, choosing to respond with patience. He suggested that they should just consider it all forgotten and move on, wanting to put an end to the tension before it could escalate further. Internally, however, he felt a wave of exhaustion from the emotional roller coaster of the past few minutes. Dahyun, sensing that he was still carrying some weight from the conversation, continued to apologize for her behavior, her words flowing quickly now, almost as if trying to erase the memory of her earlier actions. Taeyoung, curious and still trying to understand, asked what had prompted her to say such things in the first place. Dahyun admitted that, while she had not intended to speak in that way, she honestly did not know the reason why she had said it. She looked down, struggling to find words that could explain her irrational behavior. Taeyoung reflected silently that he felt much the same way at times. However, he could not ignore the contrast he saw in front of him. He pointed out gently that, despite her claim of not planning to return, she was clearly dressed up as if for a lesson, her appearance contradicting her stated intentions. Dahyun's eyes widened in surprise at his observation. She confessed, almost in disbelief, that she did not know the reason she had done that. She admitted openly that she could not explain the reason behind her ridiculous demand, and that she felt incapable of thinking like a reasonable person. Her voice wavered as she spoke, revealing a vulnerability she could not fully hide. She concluded that she simply did not feel like herself these days. Taeyoung was thinking that perhaps Dahyun had gotten excited just from watching the training session, though he didn't fully realize the depth of her excitement. He considered the possibility that her reaction might not be entirely about the session itself. He wondered about her husband and speculated silently that perhaps he had not been giving her enough attention lately. Maybe that was the reason she seemed to be seeking some attention from him now, as if she was looking to fill a void that her husband had left. It felt strangely familiar to him, almost as if he was being treated like a buffet all over again, where everyone took what they wanted freely, without hesitation. He found himself thinking repeatedly about her balloon, the way they lingered on him, and the subtle expressions that betrayed more than she intended to show. Inwardly, he chastised himself, acknowledging that he would be very foolish, maybe even a little reckless, if he chose to turn down what now appeared to be a full and open offer from her. He then resolved to try to understand her situation more clearly, to see the circumstances from her perspective, but he reminded himself that they needed to address the issue of the video she had recorded first. He reflected that she should have realized the seriousness of recording the video without explicit permission and consent. In his mind, it was a clear violation, and it needed to be dealt with immediately. Dahyun, sensing the tension, responded that she would delete the video later, as if postponing the inevitable could somehow make it less serious. Taeyoung, however, insisted firmly that it need to be deleted right then and there, without delay or hesitation. She responded with quiet acknowledgement, saying that she should indeed do that. He observed her carefully, noting inwardly that he probably should not have looked at her so closely, because her reluctance to delete the video was evident, and she seemed to be struggling to comply while maintaining some semblance of control over the situation. He instructed her not to make any excuses and to simply delete the video, emphasizing that there was no room for hesitation or evasion. She said a simple response that carried an undercurrent of uncertainty. Then he added a new layer of complexity, telling her to be honest and to inform him if she truly did not want to delete the video. This statement left her momentarily confused, as if she was unsure how to respond. He clarified that he might allow her to keep the video, but only if she was completely honest with him about her intentions. This caused her to hesitate for a few moments, a hesitation that seemed to stretch in the silence between them. Finally, she admitted that yes, she did want to keep the video, though she could not articulate a clear reason. Taeyoung urged her not to be evasive or to hide behind vague statements. He told her to be fully honest and to reveal any intentions or plans she might have concerning the video. Dahyun responded by insisting that she did not know and that she had no plan to do anything with it, but her words seemed to hang in the air without providing the reassurance he sought. He reflected inwardly that he could not understand her reasoning, that even without a concrete reason, her desire to keep the video persisted, puzzled him. He concluded that it might be necessary to ask her directly about her purpose in watching the video in the first place, to understand her mindset and intentions more clearly. She repeated firmly that she was not going to do anything with it, attempting to reassure him. Taeyoung, however, found it difficult to take her words at face value. He questioned whether she was truly being honest with him, given the circumstances. He reminded her that it was illegal to record a video of them without full consent, and that refusing to delete it when he asked made it even harder for him to trust her claims. He considered the situation carefully, pointing out that even if she claimed she would not act on the video, the mere fact that it existed posed a potential problem. When her husband was away at work and she was home alone, there was a possibility that she might simply keep it on her phone without doing anything else, but that uncertainty alone was enough to make him uneasy. Taeyoung moved closer to Dahyun, leaning in slightly as he told her not to hold herself back. He pointed out gently, yet with a hint of insistence, that this was exactly what she was doing at that moment, holding back, hesitating, unsure of herself. Dahyun was startled for a brief moment, her eyes widening slightly as she processed his words, caught off guard by the directness of his approach. He continued speaking, his tone calm but filled with sincerity, explaining that he had really wanted to ask her something important. He asked whether she truly wanted to perform the training with him, emphasizing that he could offer the training to her completely free of charge if she wished. His words hung in the air for a moment, giving Dahyun a chance to consider them, and there was a sense of gravity in his voice that made her skip a beat. Outside the room, Gina stood quietly, observing the scene and thinking deeply about what Taeyoung had just said. She realized with a mixture of surprise and admiration that he had implied Dahyun was the only one for him, and this thought left Gina feeling both amazed and slightly flustered. She reflected on her own reactions, noticing how her feelings had intensified with every interaction, how each day she found herself becoming more self-conscious and shy because she had been following his instructions so carefully and diligently. She admitted to herself that the way she had been acting, responding to him exactly as he had instructed, was making her feel increasingly aware of her own vulnerability. Gina also allowed herself a moment of reassurance, thinking that perhaps now she could truly trust him. She believed with growing confidence that he would not pay attention to other women anymore, that he was committed to his focus and intentions. Yet, even as she considered this, her thoughts naturally turned to Dahyun. She reflected on the young woman's demeanor, realizing that Dahyun did not seem like a bad person at all. Of course, Gina remembered that she had been initially wary of Dahyun, unsure of her intentions, and this caution had been heightened when Dahyun had appeared out of nowhere the previous day, surprising her with her sudden presence. Gina's mind wandered back to the events of yesterday, recalling the exact moments during the training session when Dahyun had approached. She questioned internally what Dahyun's purpose had been in being there, the reason she had shown up at that particular time, and gradually, the realization dawned on her that Dahyun had been involved because Taeyoung had helped her in some way. She thought back to Dahyun asking her about Taeyoung fainting, curious about the reason he had suddenly passed out. And Gina remembered explaining that every night when she had free time, she took the opportunity to assist him, to help him manage the training and ensure he recovered properly. After that explanation, Dahyun had absorbed a great deal of knowledge and insight, reflecting on the physical demands of repeated wholesome workout sessions. She remarked thoughtfully that it must require tremendous stamina for men to endure such rigorous training continuously, and suggested gently that Gina might consider holding back a little in future sessions to avoid overwhelming him. Gina had immediately apologized, feeling the need to acknowledge her overzealousness, and Dahyun, in turn, had recognized her as Taeyoung's girlfriend, a fact that brought Gina a small but significant sense of relief. Dahyun had also offered some gentle advice, acknowledging that though Gina might find it challenging at her age, she should still be considerate and careful with Taeyoung's time, showing a level of understanding and maturity that impressed Gina further. Returning to the present moment, Gina reflected on her own personality traits, noting inwardly that she was naturally introverted and usually hesitant in social interactions. Yet, Dahyun had surprised her by being warm, friendly, and proactive, reaching out to her first in a manner that was both kind and reassuring. Gina recognized that Dahyun was not only reliable but also genuinely considerate, someone who could be trusted to behave appropriately in delicate situations. She appreciated that Dahyun had immediately acknowledged her role as Taeyoung's girlfriend, which removed any lingering anxiety about leaving them alone together in a room. This realization allowed Gina to breathe more easily and think clearly, understanding that Dahyun's repeated visits to their gym were not a cause for concern, and that she could instead focus on being polite and respectful toward her. She resolved in her mind that there was no longer any need to worry and that she could fully trust Dahyun in every possible way, knowing that Dahyun would act appropriately and reliably. Meanwhile, inside the office, Dahyun and Taeyoung continued their wholesome workout session. Suddenly, Gina began knocking repeatedly on the door and calling out Taeyoung's name from outside. She complained that he was taking a very long time and asked him the reason he was still inside. She then questioned whether he was still talking to Dahyun and wondered if she could come in now. Her voice sounded impatient and curious at the same time. Taeyong answered her from inside and told her to wait for a moment. He apologized for making her stand outside for so long and assured her that everything was fine. After that, he slowly and slightly opened the door, trying to appear calm and natural. He explained that he had only been checking how strong Dahyun's stamina was for her training session. He tried to make his explanation sound normal, but his words immediately made Gina feel a little suspicious. She began to sense that something about the situation did not feel right. At that moment, Taeyong thought to himself that Gina must have already noticed something unusual. He felt that his excuse had sounded foolish and careless. He regretted mentioning stamina in such a strange way in front of her. Inside his mind, he decided that no matter what happened to Dahyun, he had to protect himself first and escape from trouble. He then added that he had not done any of this because he wanted to, but because Dahyun herself had asked him to do it. Gina suddenly questioned him again and asked if he had really been testing Dahyun's stamina in such a small office room. Her sudden question shocked him for a moment and made him pause. She then said that she did not understand how he could test someone properly in such a narrow space when they already had a large gym with full fitness equipment. She pointed out that the gym was designed for training, not the office. She also told him that she herself was capable of testing Dahyun's stamina and that he should have asked her to handle it instead. She complained that the office would start to smell if people exercised there. She added that although she was the one who would clean the office afterward, it still did not make sense to turn the office into a training room. Taeyong then realized that he had not noticed anything suspicious before because Gina was someone who only focused on cardio exercises and did not understand situations like this deeply. He thought that he had become so used to guiding her movements during workouts and teaching her everything step by step that he had forgotten how immature her understanding of training sessions really was. In his mind, her awareness of such situations was still very underdeveloped, almost like that of a baby. He believed that if it had been someone else standing there instead of Gina, he would have been caught a long time ago. However, since it was Gina, he found it strange that they had tested Dayon in his office, and yet Gina did not think that a cardio training session could happen in that place. Gina then called out Dayon's name, who was standing behind Taeyong near the door. She told her that she should not be standing back there quietly. She noticed that Dayon looked sweaty and tired and asked her to take a deep breath and calm herself. Taeyong told Gina that Dahyun was only taking a short break and that he would take care of her training himself. At the same time, he thought that no matter how careless or innocent Gina might be, she would eventually notice that they had actually been doing training if she looked more closely at Dahyun's condition and appearance. He also thought that he needed to make Gina leave the room before she discovered everything that had really happened. Behind him, Dahyun looked very frustrated and upset. She thought that Taeyong had talked her into doing the entire training session and had made her feel excited and motivated about it. Now, however, he was desperately trying to save himself from being caught by his girlfriend. This made her feel annoyed and disappointed with his behavior. Taeyong struggled to send Gina away and slowly moved as if he were about to close the door. Just then, Dahyun suddenly came closer to him and grabbed his arm tightly. In his mind, he thought that he had gone completely mad and that he would be in serious trouble if they were caught like this. He felt that Dahyun did not even understand the seriousness of the situation at all. At the same time, he realized that she was not even feeling as scared as he should have been, despite knowing how dangerous the situation was becoming. Gina asked Taeyong if something had happened to Dahyun because she noticed that he had been looking back at her again and again. She pointed out that his attention kept returning to Dahyun, which made her feel that something unusual must have occurred. Taeyong replied that he already knew what had happened and explained that Dahyun had said she felt embarrassed to come out because she had become very sweaty during the workout. He further told Gina that this was the reason she was still standing there instead of returning to the main area. He then asked Gina to go and bring a towel for Dahyun so that she could dry herself and feel more comfortable. Gina responded that if that was the situation, then she would go immediately and come back as soon as possible with a towel. She reassured him that there was no need to worry and that she would handle it. After Gina left, Taeyong quickly turned back toward Dahyun with a panicked expression on his face. He told her that she should not have done such a thing and explained that they were almost about to get caught because of her behavior. He warned her that her actions had made the situation dangerous and uncomfortable for him. Dahyun replied by teasing him and saying that he was finally flustered and nervous. She then asked him directly whether he was afraid of being caught by his girlfriend, who was standing right there nearby. Hearing the word girlfriend, Taeyong became very surprised and did not expect her to use that term. He reacted with shock because he had not thought of Gina in that way during the moment. Dahyun then told him not to worry and explained that she was only joking with him. She said that it was not as if she really wanted to get caught or create trouble. She clarified that her intention was only to teach him a lesson because he had been enjoying himself too much during the training session. She added that he had been acting carefree and confident, as if everything was just fun for him. She continued by saying that he had spoken as though he had experienced a very exciting, wholesome workout session with her. Yet at the same time, he had treated her as if she meant nothing to him. She pointed out that his words and actions did not match, and that this behavior had upset her. Dahyun further said that she would not forgive him for stopping the exercise in the middle of the session and for ending it without any explanation. She declared she would make him pay for what he had done and warned him to be prepared for the next day. After saying this, she turned around and started to leave. Taeyong answered her by saying that if that was the case, then she should also be prepared for what would happen next time. After she walked away, Taeyong remained standing there alone, thinking deeply about her behavior. He told himself that there must be something wrong with her and that he could not understand her actions. He reflected that he had thought she would be easy to handle, but now he realized that she was very hard to predict. He noticed that she did not even blink or hesitate when she did strange or bold things. He could not understand the reason she had warned him to be prepared for the next day, and this thought made him uneasy. He then admitted to himself that he had put himself into a sticky and confusing situation. The more he thought about it, the more uncertain he became about what would happen next. He also said to himself that, more importantly, he had believed that he had made her enjoy the exercise training. However, she still did not look excited or satisfied with the session. He wondered the reason she appeared disappointed instead of happy. He then assumed that maybe she was upset because of her husband and that this might be the reason for her strange reaction. Suddenly, Gina approached Dahyun and asked her if she was going home. Gina told her that she had brought her a cooling towel and suggested that she should try it first before leaving. She explained that it would help her cool down and feel refreshed after the workout. Dahyun refused politely and said that she was fine now and did not need it. She added that she would come back the next day instead. She also said that she was looking forward to Gina's lessons and seemed confident about returning. Gina replied that she would see her the next day and wished her well. Meanwhile, Taeyong stood there quietly and asked if there had been any issue or problem. He wanted to know whether something serious had happened. Gina then looked at him carefully and asked him directly if he had done something to Dahyun, implying that his actions might be the reason for her behavior. Dahyun was standing under the shower while her mind kept replaying everything that had happened to her. She thought carefully about each moment and felt confused by her own reactions. She told herself that she should not be thinking in such a way and that these thoughts were not right. She wondered what had suddenly taken control of her mind and the reason she had started behaving differently. She believed that all of this had happened because the head coach had persuaded her into doing something she had never intended to do. In her heart, she knew that it had never been her plan to act like that or to let herself feel that way. She kept reminding herself that she was not that kind of person and that she would never repeat such behavior again. She made a strong decision that she would never go back there and that no one at the gym would ever see her again. She convinced herself that staying away was the only way to protect her peace of mind. She also thought that if she ever ended up going back, she would surely become a strange and awkward woman who had been turned overly excited because of the frustration hidden inside her. She feared that her emotions would take control of her and make her act in ways she would later regret. The next day, however, Dahyun surprisingly found herself standing inside the gym once again. Even though she had promised herself not to return, her feet had still brought her there. She tried to calm herself by thinking that it would be fine if she only came to work out and lose some weight. She told herself that this visit had nothing to do with yesterday's events, and that she was there only for exercise. She tried to convince her own mind that this was a normal and harmless decision. When she entered the gym, she greeted everyone by saying hello in a polite and simple way. At that moment, Taeyoung was sitting at the front desk. When he noticed her, he looked at her with surprise and asked if she had really come back. He commented that she had arrived very early and also mentioned that she was dressed quite boldly. His words made her feel slightly uncomfortable. Dahyun replied that she had only come for her wholesome workout session and that she was not there for any other reason except that. Taeyoung then said that he already knew she was there to exercise because she was wearing workout clothes and there could be no other reason for her to come to the gym. Dahyun agreed with what he said, but inside her thoughts, she questioned the reason he was asking her when he already knew the answer. She wondered why he sounded as if he were testing her. She also noticed that he was already looking at her with intense and wild eyes, which made her feel uneasy and nervous at the same time. Taeyoung then told her that she was the only member present in the gym that day. He said that they should start the lesson right away and finish it as quickly as possible. Dahyun listened carefully and then asked him if that was all he had to say to her. She further questioned whether he truly had nothing else to tell her. She waited for his response, expecting something more from him. After thinking for a moment, Taeyoung added that she needed to warm up first before beginning. Hearing this, Dahyun thought that although he was telling her to warm up, she believed he actually meant that he was going to begin cardio training with her and personally teach her how to work out. She felt that he was also indirectly reminding her about what had happened the previous day. In her mind, it seemed as if he using yesterday's situation against her and holding it over her thoughts. As she started exercising, her mind continued to wander. She kept thinking that he was only trying to turn her into his workout partner behind his girlfriend's back. She believed that this was his hidden intention and that he was not being honest with her. She felt that he always confused her with his words and actions and kept playing with her emotions in this manner. These thoughts made her feel uncomfortable, yet she continued with the wholesome workout session. After some time had passed, Dahyun finally said that she needed to take a break for a while. She felt tired and overwhelmed by her thoughts. At that moment, she realized that Taeyoung looked as if he was no longer interested in her. Taeyoung was observing Dahyun as she dressed and thinking to himself, trying to understand the reason behind the way she had chosen to dress. He could not figure out the reason she was dressing like that today, and it seemed unusual, and it made him slightly uneasy. He realized that Dahyun had grown bolder ever since he had encouraged her to step just a little beyond her comfort zone during their previous interactions. The thought crossed his mind that perhaps she was testing her own limits or trying to explore a side of herself that she rarely showed to others. At the same time, he noticed that Gina had been trailing them closely, almost like a walking security camera, monitoring their every move. The presence of Gina made it extremely difficult for him to glance at Dahyun intentionally without feeling the weight of her watchful gaze. Every time he tried to look, he caught himself hesitating, thinking about Gina's unblinking attention, and feeling as if he was being silently judged for even the smallest gestures. As he stood there, his mind wandered back to the events of the previous night. He remembered clearly how Gina had approached him with questions, asking if he had done anything with Dahyun. Her tone had seemed almost investigative, as if she were trying to uncover whether he had committed some kind of indiscretion. He recalled how Dahyun had left the gym with her face flushed, her cheeks bright red, and he knew instantly that she must have noticed something unusual. He reflected on the situation and thought that there was no way Dahyun had not realized that something had been off, some subtle shift or hidden tension that had gone unnoticed by others. This realization left him momentarily confused, as he could not think of any explanation that would satisfy the situation. He wondered whether he should have tried to calm her down with some light cardio training, as they had done during their previous sessions. However, he quickly dismissed the thought, knowing that it was impossible because he had been in such a hurry to get dressed that he had not been able to spend proper time with her or guide her through any calming exercises. Taeyoung's thoughts then shifted to the potential consequences of being seen together by Gina. He worried that if she had caught sight of them interacting too closely again, he would face even greater trouble. He tried to recall the previous incidents, remembering the specific moment when he had passed out during training and Coach Gina had come to wake him up. She had helped him carefully move to a safer place to ensure he was okay. And at the time, He had not realized the larger implications of the situation. Now, with everything in perspective, he understood that Da-hyun had indeed discovered that he and Gina had been holding private, wholesome workout sessions together. Turning to Gina, he felt compelled to confront her directly and asked if there was anything she had not told him about the situation. Gina, slightly caught off guard, responded that she did not understand what he meant, her voice laced with subtle confusion. Taeyong persisted, trying to determine whether she had been aware that Da-hyun had witnessed them during their wholesome workout session. As he observed her, he noticed that she began to blush lightly while attempting to explain. And in that moment, he realized that this must have been the reason Da-hyun's face had been so red when she left the gym. The pieces began to fit together. He confirmed his suspicion to Gina, stating firmly that she should not have withheld such important information that had clearly affected Da-hyun. Gina fell silent for a moment, reflecting on his words, and then admitted that she had misunderstood the entire situation. She apologized, explaining that she had felt very relieved to know that nothing inappropriate had occurred between him and Da-hyun, emphasizing her relief and the weight of her previous misunderstanding. Feeling a sense of reassurance, Taeyong pulled Gina into a warm hug and told her once more that she was the only one for him, now and always. This declaration made Gina feel shy and flustered for a brief moment, her cheeks coloring slightly as she absorbed his words. As they stood together, he internally reflected that he had managed to survive yet another day while keeping his interactions in check, carefully navigating the delicate balance of the situation to avoid further misunderstandings. Gina, still processing her emotions, leaned closer and warned him with a soft but firm tone, telling him to ensure that he did not pay attention to any other woman. She explained that she would have been extremely upset if it had not been for her initial misunderstanding, which caused a brief flicker of confusion in Taeyong's mind. He paused, thinking carefully about her words, realizing that her instructions meant he was not to direct attention toward any other woman at all. This thought left him feeling frustrated and a little constrained because, in truth, he was torn. He wanted to help Da-hyun and had felt compelled to agree when she had begged him to perform training sessions together. Yet, Gina's vigilant presence prevented him from acting freely. The combination of his desire to assist Da-hyun and the constant watchfulness of Gina left him feeling trapped, unable to make any move without repercussions, and it was driving him quietly but intensely mad. Returning to reality, he informed Da-hyun that he was going to use the restroom, and she simply replied with her tone casual yet slightly curious. As he walked into the restroom, he immediately felt a wave of relief, but it was mixed with tension. He began washing his hands slowly, feeling the cool water trickle down, and thought about how suffocating the entire situation had become for him. The thought that Gina might follow him crossed his mind, and he silently hoped that she would respect his privacy, though a small part of him suspected she would not. At the same time, his mind wandered back to Da-hyun. He found himself wondering the reason she had chosen to wear such revealing clothing at the gym today. It was difficult for him to process. He realized that every movement she made seemed to draw his attention, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not focus on his own exercise routine. Every glance at her pulled his concentration away, making him increasingly aware of his own reactions. He shook his head subtly, trying to dismiss these thoughts, but they kept returning like an echo he could not silence. Suddenly, as he turned to check his bag, his eyes widened in shock. Gina was standing behind him, completely silent until that moment, and the sight made his heart skip a beat. He quickly tried to regain composure and said, almost defensively, that he was not expressing any romantic interest in Da-hyun. Instead, he clarified that it was the choice of her clothing that seemed designed to attract attention and make it difficult for anyone, especially a man, to avoid noticing her. Gina, standing there with a calm and knowing expression, reassured him immediately. She told him that it was fine and that he could not help noticing Da-hyun, given the revealing outfit, and that it was natural for him to feel that way. She added thoughtfully that, in her perspective, Da-hyun had been inconsiderate by dressing in such a manner, placing the responsibility for distraction unfairly on others. He felt a brief wave of relief wash over him, almost like a weight had been lifted. But he quickly reminded himself that Gina would not let him off the hook so easily. Her calm and confident demeanor made him realize she would test him in her own way. He acknowledged her point with a quiet nod and admitted that she was right. He promised that he would try hard to look away and regain focus on himself, adding that he intended to leave the restroom first to avoid further awkwardness. However, Gina responded in a way that caught him off guard. She told him that he should not try so hard, which left him momentarily confused. Her tone was firm yet playful, suggesting that she expected him to handle this differently. Then, almost as if reading his hesitation, she explained that he would not need to look away if she performed cardio training with him right at that moment. He tried to interject, asking her to calm down and consider the situation carefully, but she did not pause or acknowledge his caution. Instead, she began preparing herself for the cardio training, moving with determination. He found it increasingly difficult to stop her, reminding her that she had once mentioned feeling embarrassed if they were caught. He emphasized that Dahyun was present outside and could witness everything if they were not careful. Gina, however, remained unfazed. She calmly reassured him that it was fine as long as they did not get caught. Her confidence was almost contagious, yet it also added to his anxiety. He continued to reason with her, explaining that he had told Dahyun he was going to use the restroom, and now that she had followed him, the situation had become more serious than he anticipated. He added, with a hint of frustration, that she should feel some sense of shame for performing cardio training in the restroom, a place not meant for such activities. Unbeknownst to both of them, Dahyun was standing just outside the restroom door, quietly listening and observing the entire scene. She noticed the slight creak of the door as Gina entered and deduced that Gina must have followed him inside. Standing there, Dahyun made a mental note to remain present, carefully observing their actions and reactions without making her presence known. She watched silently as they started the cardio session, aware of every movement and exchange between them. Meanwhile, Gina kept glancing toward the door intermittently, checking if Dahyun was still standing outside. She reassured him, almost teasingly, that it did not matter to her and that she was not embarrassed by anyone who might be present outside. She explained, with an air of defiance, that even if they were caught, it would not be a significant issue for them. In her view, it was not as if Dahyun could intervene or do anything to come between them. Gina said that everything was fine, trying to appear calm. Taeyong looked at her carefully and asked if something was wrong with her. She replied that she was feeling anxious and uneasy for no clear reason. Hearing this, he began thinking that she might have misunderstood the situation. However, the way Dahyun had dressed and the way she had looked at him earlier made it obvious to him that she was interested in him. Even though he noticed this, he did not want to doubt Gina or continue training with Dahyun while another person was standing outside. Gina then stared at him with intensity and told him that she only wanted to make one thing clear, which was that he belonged to her. Inside her mind, she thought that if she did not say this openly, it would create trouble for her later. She believed that silence would only make the situation worse. Taeyong thought that Gina had suddenly started acting strangely and that the way she spoke to him felt unreasonable. He reminded himself that he had been avoiding Dahyun's eyes on purpose and had not looked at her intentionally even once. Still, Gina had been watching him closely the entire day. He could not understand her true motive, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized that she had always behaved in a strange and unusual way like this. He then thought about how Dahyun had been ready to perform the training session with him earlier, but he could not do that because of Gina's presence. This made him feel conflicted and frustrated. Now he felt that he would have to train with Gina instead, so that the situation would seem less unfair and more balanced in his own mind. After reaching this decision, he said that they should begin the cardio training right there. Following his words, both of them started performing the wholesome workout session together. Meanwhile, Dahyun had been standing outside the restroom and thinking to herself that neither of them felt any shame, even though she was present nearby. She felt confused and uncomfortable about what she was witnessing. At first, she could not understand the situation clearly, but then she began to realize the reason Taeyong had not shown any interest in her earlier. She came to the conclusion that it was probably a good thing and decided that she should only focus on her wholesome workout session instead of thinking about them. She told herself that concentrating on her training would be better for her mind and her emotions. She also thought that maybe this situation was actually good for her in the end and that it would help her move forward without expectations. After the wholesome workout session was completed, Gina suggested that they should go outside together. Taeyong asked her to wait for a minute and said that Dahyun was still outside and might become suspicious if they left at the same time. He then suddenly realized that Gina had not even closed the door properly earlier. This made him more cautious about their movements. Gina agreed with him and said that she would go outside first while he should take his time and come later. As she walked out of the restroom, she thought to herself that Dahyun would surely notice what had happened. She believed there was no way Dahyun would not understand the situation. In her mind, she was certain that Dahyun already knew something about it and that her presence would not go unnoticed. Dahyun was now sitting quietly inside the gym room when Taeyong approached her. He asked her if she had heard anything while she was outside. She replied that he had just arrived and that she had been wearing her earphones, so she did not hear him coming. Hearing this, he realized that she had not listened to their conversation at all. He thought that she must have been resting and taking a break while sitting there. This made him believe that she did not know anything about what had happened between him and Gina, although the situation still felt very unusual and uncomfortable to him. Dahyun then spoke again and asked if they were going to finish their lesson soon. Taeyong answered that they should finish it now. She said that it was fine because there was something she needed to do afterward. In reality, she had already booked a motel for both of them after the training session was completed, and she was keeping this plan to herself for the moment. After completing the training session, Dahyun told Taeyong that she had suddenly remembered something important she needed to take care of, and that she was going to leave right away. She explained this in a hurried manner, as if the thought had just come to her mind. Hearing her words, Taeyong responded that he felt relieved, yet at the same time, everything felt strange and unreal to him. He could not clearly explain the reason, but the entire situation made him feel disconnected from reality. After saying that, Dahyun left the gym and walked away without looking back. As soon as she was gone, Taeyong began to think deeply about what had just happened. He reflected that they had not been caught even after creating trouble in the bathroom earlier. This thought stayed in his mind and made him uneasy. He wondered whether Dahyun had only been pretending in front of him the whole time, or if she had run away because she was feeling embarrassed about everything that had happened. He also considered the possibility that she might stop coming to the gym completely from now on. These thoughts kept circling in his mind and made him feel uncertain. However, what surprised him even more was that Gina had stopped her cardio training immediately after finishing the session. This behavior is very unusual for her. In his thoughts, he compared Gina to a supercar with no brakes, because she had always been the kind of person who never stopped once she started exercising and never slowed down no matter how tired she became. At that moment, Gina was busy cleaning the gym equipment and arranging things around the workout area. Taeyong approached her quietly and asked if she was feeling under the weather. Gina looked at him in surprise because she did not expect such a question from him. She seemed confused and slightly caught off guard. Taeyong then explained himself and said that he was only asking because she usually wanted to continue with her cardio training after every session, but this time she had chosen not to do it. He pointed out that her behavior was different from usual, which made him worry about her condition. Gina replied that she had been trying to be considerate toward him. She explained that she had heard that men liked long and intense wholesome workout sessions, so she believed that he would be happy if she kept going with the training. However, she had also heard that men could become tired easily, and because of that, she decided to stop her cardio session this time. Taeyong then asked her who had told her all these things about men and workouts. Gina answered that Dahyun had told her everything. Hearing this response made Taeyong feel extremely surprised. Inside his mind, he thought that he had only been trying to tease Dahyun earlier and had never expected her to take his words so seriously. He felt that she had misunderstood his intentions. He also believed that Dahyun might be saying all these things based on her personal experiences with her husband. This realization made him even more confused. He reflected that things had been difficult for him because of Gina's intense training style, but now it seemed that Dahyun had actually helped him a lot in an unexpected way. He decided that he should pretend that this was truly the case and accept it as if it were normal. After thinking about it, Taeyong admitted to Gina that he had indeed overworked himself during the training session. Gina responded that she had no idea about it and immediately apologized to him. She expressed regret for not noticing his condition earlier. Taeyong told her that it was fine and that she did not need to feel sorry. He said that he had been able to complete the training only because it was with her and that her effort had helped him push through. At the same time, he gently told her that from now on she just needed to do better and be more careful about his limits. Suddenly, a message popped up on Taeyong's phone screen. The sudden vibration caught his attention. He said out loud that someone had just texted him and slowly took out his phone. When he looked at the screen, he saw that the message was from Dahyun. In the message, she told him the name of a hotel and the room number. She urged him to hurry and come quickly if he did not want his girlfriend to find out about them. Reading those words made Taeyong extremely nervous. After reading the message, he quickly put his phone back into his pocket. He then turned to Gina and told her that something urgent had come up and that he needed to go home first. His voice sounded serious, and he tried not to reveal his nervousness. Gina replied that it was okay and did not question him further. Taeyong then said that he was going to leave now and that he would leave the responsibility of the gym to her. Gina remained standing there for a moment after he left. He felt very shallow and confused inside. She kept thinking about what Taeyong had said earlier, especially when he told her that he had been able to perform perfect cardio training only because he was doing it with her. That evening, Dahyun was sitting quietly in her hotel room after sending a message to Taeyong. Once the message was sent, she could not stop thinking about it. She kept telling herself that she had already sent him the message, but she did not know whether he would really come. Her mind was filled with uncertainty. Yet she strongly believed that there was no way he would refuse her. She felt sure that he would not ignore her message and that he would eventually appear at the hotel. As she waited, she slowly walked toward the mirror and looked at her reflection. While staring at herself, she began thinking that her clothes were quite revealing that day. She noticed every detail of her appearance and wondered the reason she had chosen to dress like that. Even though she realized how bold her outfit looked, she reminded herself that this had not been her original intention. She had not planned to dress this way for any particular reason, yet now she could not change it. While standing in front of the mirror, more thoughts filled her mind. She reflected on how Taeyong had not even looked at her once earlier. Not even when she was dressed like that had he paid her any attention. This made her feel restless and slightly frustrated. Instead of noticing her, he had chosen to perform the cardio training session with Gina, and she believed he had done it only to provoke her. In her mind, she became convinced that he must have been the one who initiated the training first, and that Gina had only been present as a witness during that session. However, when Dahyun thought more deeply about what she had seen, she remembered how Gina had looked during the training. It had appeared as though Gina was having the time of her life. She seemed completely absorbed in the training and was clearly enjoying every moment of it. Dahyun could not ignore the way Gina had looked so energetic and cheerful while training, and this made Dahyun feel even more conflicted inside. After spending some time lost in these thoughts, Dahyun began strengthening her finger muscles in the room. She tried to focus on the exercise, hoping it would distract her from everything else. She repeated the movements again and again, slowly and carefully, but her mind was still full of mixed emotions. A short while later, as she was still exercising her fingers, Taeyong suddenly entered the room. His sudden arrival made Dahyun feel completely embarrassed. She had not expected him to come in at that exact moment, and she immediately felt awkward about being seen like that. Taeyong, on the other hand, looked at her and thought to himself that she had been training while dressed in such revealing clothes. This thought surprised him, and he could not help but react to it. He then commented that she must be extremely eager for another cardio training session. He reminded her that they had only met a few days earlier, and that now she had called him to perform cardio training with her in the hotel. As he spoke, he also wondered privately whether she was still pretending to believe her own excuse about the training. He told her that he would accept whatever explanation she gave, but he honestly did not understand the reason she had called him there in such a way. He also pointed out that what she had done was very risky. In response, Dahyun told him that this was her punishment for him. She said that he had teased her and had done the cardio training without her, and that was the reason she had called him there. She continued by saying that he had deliberately looked away from her on purpose and then chosen to train with Gina instead. Because of that, this situation was meant to be his punishment. As she spoke, Taeyong realized that she already knew everything about what had happened. He tried to explain that this had never been his intention in the first place. At the same time, inside his mind, he thought that she had been the one who had secretly watched them, and now she was talking about punishing him. This thought made him feel very angry and confused. He could not understand the reason she was accusing him when she had been the one who had seen everything on her own. Still, he admitted out loud that he could not deny it and that she had caught him red-handed. Dahyun replied confidently that he was very easy to read and that she had understood his actions clearly. Her tone showed that she felt certain about what she had seen and what she believed. Taeyong then said that he would tease her even more. He explained that it was fun to watch her get angry and excited at the same time. He added that he would continue teasing her about it because her reactions amused him. Dahyun immediately reminded him that he had promised to help her with the training. In response, Taeyong told her that she could keep complaining if she wanted, but it would only be her own loss in the end. He made it clear that he was not bothered by her complaints and that the choice was hers. Finally, he suggested that instead of arguing, they should simply start performing the cardio training together. Hearing this, Dahyun agreed and said that she also wanted to train with him. She once again reminded him that he had promised he would do the training with her, and she expected him to keep that promise.